Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into a really critical environmental challenge. It involves mangrove forests, nature's incredible coastal guardians.
Absolutely incredible. They're ecological powerhouses. Think huge blue carbon sinks, vital sea defenses protecting coastlines, nurseries for countless marine species. Just vital.
Okay, so here's the strange part, the paradox we need to unpack. Imagine a fish dying of thirst in the ocean. Sounds impossible, right?
Right.
Well, that's kind of what's happening to mangroves. These salt-loving plants, perfectly adapted for coastal life, are dying, not from normal seawater, but from too much salt, extreme levels.
Exactly. We call it hypersalinity. Anything really over 40 practical salinity units or to Suzu. It's lethal for them, even though they live in saltwater normally.
It sounds completely backwards. So what does this mean, and why is it such a tough nut to crack?
Well, our mission today is to explore why people on the front lines, those trying to restore these forests, often call this an unsolved problem. We need to get into the science behind it.
Okay, so the deep dive really starts when we understand how salt, which they usually tolerate, actually becomes a killer.
Right. It's not passive survival for mangroves. It's an active battle, energetically very expensive. And extreme salt hits them with a sort of twofold assault.
Twofold. How so?
First, there's physiological drought. Basically, the salt concentration outside the roots in the soil gets so high that water can't enter the plant, even if the roots are completely submerged.
Like being stranded at sea, dying of thirst, surrounded by water.
Precisely. And the second hit is ion toxicity. Specific ions, mostly sodium and chloride, build up inside the plant cells.
Okay.
And they just wreak havoc. They disrupt cell processes, block the uptake of essential nutrients. It's damaging from the inside out.
But mangroves do have ways to cope with salt, right? I mean, that's what they're known for.
Oh, definitely. They have sophisticated tricks, excluding salt at the roots, excreting it from special leaf glands, storing it in old leaves they then drop. But these systems have limits. They just get overwhelmed by extreme salinity.
And here's something critical for trying to fix damaged areas. The seedlings. They're particularly vulnerable, aren't they?
Hugely vulnerable. They often die at salinity levels that mature trees can handle just fine. Some species, for instance, need really low salinity, maybe 3 to 5 PO, for their first, say, 15, 20 weeks.
Wow, okay. So getting new forests started in these hypersaline areas is incredibly difficult.
Extremely. It's a major bottleneck. And what's driving this extreme salinity, it's not always just natural. It's often a complex mix. And human activity is a big accelerator.
How so?
Well, think about altered hydrology. We build things, roads, dams, aquaculture ponds that block the natural ebb and flow of tides. Water gets trapped, evaporates, and the salt just concentrates. You end up with these stagnant, hypersaline lagoons.
So we're disrupting the natural flushing system. Are we also, directly adding salt?
We are, yeah. Desalination plants are a big one. They produce fresh water, which is great. But the byproduct is this super concentrated brine.
And where does that go?
Often, it's just discharged back into coastal waters. It creates these localized hotspots of extreme salinity right where mangroves might otherwise thrive. It's a significant impact.
Okay, and layered on top of all this is climate change.
Climate change is the threat multiplier, definitely. Sea level rise pushes salt water further inland, obviously, but also extreme weather events. Bigger storm surges, more intense cyclones, they drive huge amounts of seawater way inland, causing rapid, widespread salinization.
You see this playing out in places like the Sundarbans, right? The world's largest mangrove forests.
Exactly. Less fresh water is coming down the rivers from upstream, partly due to things like dams.
Yeah.
Combine that with more frequent, intense cyclones pushing salt water in from the sea.
And the forest changes.
Yeah, the less salt-tolerant species, like the iconic Sindori tree, they start to decline. More tolerant species like Avicennia marina take over. The whole character of the forest shifts.
So when we try to restore these areas, what are the options? You mentioned a toolkit.
There are options, yes. Physical methods, chemical, biological. But like you said earlier, no single method is a magic bullet, a panacea. That's really why it's still seen as unsolved.
Which brings us to that classic, frustrating problem in environmental work, the project management trilemma. You rarely get solutions that are fast, cheap, and effective. You usually have to pick two, if you're lucky.
That sums it up perfectly. Take physical leaching, basically washing the salt out with fresh water. can be effective and relatively fast.
But
But it needs enormous amounts of fresh water, which is often scarce itself. Plus, you risk flushing out nutrients or even contaminants into the groundwater. You might just be shifting the problem.
right, turning a soil problem into a water pollution problem.
Yeah.
What about biological methods, using plants?
Phytoremediation, yeah. Using specific plants that accumulate salt in their tissues. It sounds ecologically friendly, low cost, but it's incredibly slow. We're talking years, potentially decades, to make a significant difference. And then, what do you do with all the harvested plants full of salt? And maybe other pollutants, too. It creates a secondary waste issue.
And underlying all these specific challenges is the sheer scale, right? The tyranny of scale.
Yeah, exactly. What works in a small lab plot might be completely impractical or unaffordable across thousands of hectares of remote, difficult coastline. Scaling up is a massive hurdle.
So given these challenges, what's the path forward? Is it just about finding better ways to fix the soil?
Maybe not just fixing the soil, there's a growing idea, a paradigm shift perhaps, towards preventing the salinization in the first place, and also adapting the plants themselves. Thinking more about integrated management.
Integrated management, like combining approaches.
Yes, potentially using chemical soil amendments first to help loosen the salt, then using less fresh water for leaching, for example, looking for synergies.
And what about connecting this to other sectors? I've heard ideas about integrating industry and ecology.
That's a really exciting area. Could we turn industrial waste, like that desalination brine we mentioned, into a resource? Maybe use it for specialized salt-tolerant aquaculture, or even extract minerals from it. The revenue could potentially help fund the ecological restoration work, closing the loop, in a way.
That sounds promising. And then there's the high-tech frontier, genetics.
Right, the genetic frontier. Using biotechnology, maybe tools like CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing to enhance the natural salt tolerance of mangroves, making them more resilient.
But that raises some big questions, doesn't it? Ecological, ethical.
Huge questions. We need to be very careful and thoughtful about releasing genetically modified organisms into complex natural ecosystems. It's powerful technology, but it carries risks.
Are there large-scale projects already trying some of these newer approaches?
The Oman Blue Carbon Project is a notable example. They're aiming to plant 100 million mangroves, focusing on a highly tolerant native species, Avicennia marina. And they're explicitly linking the ecological goals with carbon credits, trying to make it financially sustainable too.
So the challenge is clearly immense, complex, interconnected problem.
Immense, yes. But I agree with the original point, not insurmountable.
It seems the real key, then, isn't finding that one perfect silver bullet solution for turning these degraded coastlines back into thriving ecosystems. It's more about cultivating the wisdom, maybe the patience, to orchestrate many different approaches together. So thinking about that, what new insights does this whole mangrove struggle spark for you when you look at other complex environmental challenges we face?